All right, what up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Living the Dream podcast. Today on the show, we have Victoria Wieck, who is the epitome of the rags to riches American dream story. She is an author and business owner. Victoria, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for asking. And I have to tell you, I love the title of your podcast and the purpose of your podcast, which is, we should all dare to dream and live the dream if possible, right?
Of course, and that is exactly what you did and what we're going to get into. So we actually like to jump right in. If you could start with telling us a little bit more about yourself and what you like to do for fun, that'd be great.
Yeah. So my parents brought me here to America when I was very young, in my early teens, because they had four girls. And at the time in South Korea, which is where I was born, um, women didn't have a lot of opportunities. In fact, women were highly encouraged not to go to college. They were considered highly educated if they went to high school, basically. So since he had four girls, he felt that he wanted his girls to have opportunities. And if they chose to be simply a mother or a housewife, it should be their choice and not the society's choice. So he brought us here. Upon arrival, he found out that all his assets were frozen in both countries. He had no money, at all. In those days, it was illegal for you to take the money out of the country, even if it's your own money. So we had to start our lives over here. And I didn't speak a word of English. My father didn't speak a word of English. So life, dreaming about American dream seemed very daunting at the time. But having from that start, I went ahead and started my own business, turning my passion for jewelry design into a business. And as of 2017, when my bio was written, because I have a book coming up, I had done over $500 million in retail sales, which is it's a number I never imagined I would do. I never even dreamt that number, but here I am. So I like to help people. I like to encourage people to follow their dreams, however ridiculous it sounds at the time, because it just might come true.
Yeah, yeah, there we go. I love that. Thank you for that introduction. Just real quick, tell us a bit more about your motivation. So we know you had a kind of rougher
Right.
upbringing. What really gets you up and keeps you going every day?
Yeah. So basically, when my parents came here, until my parents came here, I spent like, an unlimited amount of time with my mom because my mother didn't, women were not allowed to go to work outside. They were, looked down upon if they worked outside. In fact, not only they were down upon, but their whole families would be looked down upon. So, they didn't go to work. So one benefit of that society is that my mom was with me all the time. And I saw my dad quite often too, because we were not poor. We were not really affluent, but we were upper middle class. And upper middle class in that culture, had a maid or a driver, all that stuff. So I had all that. When I came to America, my parents both, as I told you, they had 30 bucks, family of seven. So they both worked 2 to 3 jobs per person, Monday through Sunday. So I rarely saw my parents. I was the oldest of the five kids. So the day I landed in America, very next day, my parents started going to work at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they didn't come home until about 10 o'clock at night. So I rarely saw them. So after I got highly educated, I worked through college. I basically started working full time since I was 15. I got decent jobs and all, but I thought to myself, in order for me to keep on getting promoted, had to keep on working longer and longer hours, which meant that I would hire better quality nannies to help to take care of my kids. And that was the one thing that I felt like I was robbed from. I didn't have a childhood. I didn't have any parents by the time, I was 14, 15 years old. So that was a non-negotiable for me. I really needed to be a mother. And I wanted to, my family life just didn't exist once I got here. So I thought, you know what? I'm doing the same thing to my kids that my parents did to me. They did it involuntarily because they didn't have a choice, but I had choices. Although a lot of people would argue that you don't have a choice, but I felt like I had choices. So I had to take a chance. I was probably about your age when I started my company. And everybody I knew told me, you're crazy, you have an MBA, yeah, if you start your own business and you don't succeed in 2 years, no one's going to hire you because there's going to be like 2 years of blank sheet there. And I was highly discouraged from starting my own business, because the opportunity cost of leaving your job, the day job, was very high. But I felt I had to choose it. I chose it. And then I thought, listening to all these people telling me how I'm gonna fail, like they were all counting whether you're gonna fail, completely go bankrupt within 6 months or 2 years. That was the prevailing thought for all around me. I thought, you know what? There's a 90% chance I'm not gonna make any money. And as long as I'm not gonna do make any money, I might as well do what I love to do. At least I'll enjoy my life being broke, you know?
Yeah.
So so I love jewelry. I never could afford it, but I love jewelry. And so I decided to start my company there. So that's what got me going.
I love it. And so, just curious, you met so much opposition from the people that you cared about, and there was like, you were still really young when you started your company, and there's the risk of going broke again, and you experienced being broke when you came to America,
Right,
right?
right.
And so, you had all this fear, you had all this opposition, but you still made your first sales. And I want you to talk to me about the hurdles you encountered making those first sales. Like, was there a marketing issue? Was there a sales issue?
Oh
Or did
yeah,
it
all of
just.
the above. Are you kidding? All of the above. This podcast should be like a 10-hour podcast. Okay, so when you don't have any money, of course you can't market yourself. And you are too young to remember this. In fact, that you weren't even born when I started my company. But back in the 80s, the culture, overall culture all over the world is you go with the brand, like you go with the Campbell soup, instead of like a boutique brand. You go with IBM computers, you go with General Electric, whatever. You go with the name brand that's been there. So as a person starting your new company, you have very little chance of getting any traction, right? And there were like three TV stations: NBC, ABC, CBS, I think. There were no cable stations, and we didn't have internet. So, the only way a lot of people would start their company, this is why the failure rate was so high, because you would advertise in the papers, and then in order for you to actually advertise, you would have graphic designers, do the graphics. You would have your catalogs already printed instead of like on the internet. Those catalogs cost $50,000 or more. So I didn't have the money to do that. So, but I didn't give up. And, I think I was kind of street smarts, back then, because I thought, okay, well, how can I, first of all, borrowing money from my friends, family, or a bank, even if they were, willing to give you money, and borrow all that money before you tested the market, before you actually knew that your jewelry, for any reason whatsoever, was attractive to anybody, was stupid.
Yep.
So I thought, how do I get my idea for jewelry into, how do I even test to see if anybody wants it at all? So since I didn't have money to make samples, now jewelry samples cost a lot of money. Like if you gave me a ring design or a pendant design, and it was somewhat complicated. It didn't just have a single stone. It had like let's say a floral leaf or a honeybee or something like that. The mold, the original mold to make that is about $1,000. So if you have 10 designs, you're looking at $10,000. Okay. This is before you pay for the gold for that thing. Okay. So you can see, if you did 20 designs, that's like $20,000 before you found out anybody wants anything from you. And so what I did was I actually, rendered my designs instead of sending it to like somebody to make the mold. I then went to the local stores like Neiman Marcus and Saks Fifth Avenue. Living in LA, I had two of them, within 20 miles of me. So I went over there and with my little sketchbook, and I asked to meet with the assistant department manager, because I figured department manager might be a little snobby, in a store like that. They may not give you the time. So I asked, assistant manager, and I said, I'm a student. I don't have any business. I don't have any experience. And I'm a little bit embarrassed to show you this, but, I aspire to be a designer someday, supplying to somebody like you. And I just wanted to see if, what your opinion of it, is there anything here that's saleable, and can you give me any, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I just want to get some feedback. And the first one I went to was Neiman Marcus, and the woman's like, "Oh my God, these are beautiful. Like I can sell this like right now." And I said, "Well, how much? For how much?" And she goes, "Well, how much is it? We'll just sell it." And I was like, she goes, people, our customers here, we sell to most of the Hollywood, and they don't want anything that's already out in the stores. They want something that's really unique and beautiful, and your designs are really beautiful. And she went on and on and on. And so I left her my sketchbook. I quickly came home and sketched some more. And I went to their competitor right across the street at Saks Fifth Avenue on Rodeo and Wilshire. And I got a very similar response from her. And I thought, you know what? I had the good sense to realize that these two stores are not, first of all, these guys could be completely flakes because they're assistant buyers. They didn't have the authority to buy anything. And secondly, their world is not real world because people I knew at that time, $50, I mean, they'd have to ask 30 people before that would be anything. All of my
Yeah.
friends were poor. So then I went to, stores that are today's equivalent of like the Macy's at Nordstrom's. The Macy's and Nordstrom's were not out in California yet. So I went to all the other stores and I came up with about 8 styles that I felt like that's very marketable to massive amount of people. So, and so I basically test drove my designs without having to make the samples. And, so even to this day, and from that point forward, I have never really risked money, no, not my money or anybody else's money. I'm a real believer in testing, tweaking, testing, tweaking. So when I finally had pretty good, by the way, the Saks Fifth Avenue and Nordstrom, I mean, Neiman Marcus system buyers, they actually did come through. They came up with a bunch of, money for me. So, and they weren't price conscious at all either. But when I first took my business trip, I didn't go to New York. I didn't go to places, London or places where the big stores like Saks Fifth Avenue, their headquarters is in New York. I didn't go there. I went to Dallas, where a lot of the mid tier like Dillard's, JCPenney, a lot of smaller stores were kind of like wholesalers, a lot of distributors were there. Because I figure if I'm going to make any mistakes, I'd rather make a mistake in a smaller scale in a place where no one's going to really remember that you were really dumb, you know?
Yeah.
So I did all that. And, I did make my share of my mistakes. So, and so backing up a little bit, when I started my company, my goal wasn't to be a millionaire. It wasn't to like really, my American dream at that time was to be a mom where I could actually watch them grow, feed them, clothe them, and send them to school. And I thought if I could make $2,000 a month, I could do that. As long as I was willing to give up a dream of owning a home ever, and I didn't need a new car. I was driving a $2,000 Pinto. Like it used to blow up. I mean, you're too young to remember that, but Pinto hatchbacks were very famous for blowing. Literally, the car would blow up, and all the Pintos were recalled, except like my model was like a year before the recall or whatever. So it had like 100,000 miles on it, and it was still running. And it was like $2,000. I mean, even back then, it was a lot of very little money for a whole car. So I thought, as long as I didn't have to buy a new car, and I didn't ever need to go buy a home, I could live on $2,000 a month because my rent was like $700 a month, and I could feed them and I could sustain myself. And so that was my goal. And I thought, okay, in order for me to make $2,000 a month, how many customers would I have to have? What do I have to sell? And in those days, you had direct mail, like you would actually send them a letter.
Hmm.
It was like 9 cents to 7 or 8, maybe 9 cents to send the first class mail. And so I went downstairs to, I couldn't buy like a mailing list. So I went downstairs to the they used to have a travel agent that would actually book your travels. And they had all these books. You didn't used to be able to actually book directly with an airline. You had to go to a travel agent. So the travel agency, down the street, they always needed help, like answering the phones or whatever. So I told them like I'll answer the phone for a few hours, but while you have downtime, I want to be able to use your book because the book has every gift shop, the buyer's name, every department store. It had listings of because travel agents would have to tell people like where to go.
Hmm.
So I basically wrote 50 letters a day, every day, because they were highly curated letters. By the way, I would say, for example, instead of saying dear buyer, I would say dear Timmy. I saw your collection, and it was let's say you're a buyer of Harrods London or something. I would say, I saw your beautiful spring blossoms collection. They're absolutely gorgeous, and um, you know, I I commend you for getting together such an amazing collection. And by the way, I happen to have something that could actually go with the collection. I noticed that you didn't have bracelets to go with your beautiful earrings and pendant or whatever. So the person knew that I knew, I wrote their standby name. They knew that I had done the homework. And so but even then, your chances of actually getting a response was like,
Slim.
yeah, but it was less than 5%. And I'm not saying positive response, just saying, hey, I don't want it, or I need more information, or thank you for writing, but it's not for us.
And so you were finding people who had bought jewelry at the travel agency, or how was
Yeah,
that?
names of department stores, names of any gift shops.
I see.
So there could be a like a Marriott hotel has a store in the that they would actually have a name listed.
Yep.
So because my letters were so highly curated and they were very methodically written, and I didn't if I, and also I would also take a Polaroid picture of the jewelry that I have instead of creating a whole catalog. And if you take a Polaroid picture, like just a regular 35 millimeter camera, and I cut a deal with the local camera person, like they used to actually have a film and you have to print it. I got it for like 20 cents a copy, and I'd get like 10 or 15 of them. And I would send only 4 pictures. I would tell them, hey, it's brand new off the press. I didn't, it didn't even make our catalog, but it's, I selected these for you because your collection, X had beautiful things or something. And I selected only 4 because 4 with 4 photos, 3 by 5, would actually fit into one, like a first class postage stamp. If I'm sending, like if I'm dealing with somebody like in London or like France or wherever, I would send them by a fax. Fax used to be like today's text. Like a FedEx package, they would always give it to whoever the fax is supposed to go to.
Yep.
So, and the fax was cheaper. Then it was like fax was like timed every 6 seconds or something. International phone calls were pretty expensive. So I did that. And the reason I did that is because my kids would go to school from like 7:45. I'd have to be ready to take them to school at 7:45 because I'd be in the car at 7:50 and drop them off, come back. So I was always up about 5:30 in the morning. And I thought, okay, so kids are getting ready, like they take some time to eat and all that. And I was always hyper. And I thought, coming from Korea, I always knew there were different time zones. And I thought, well, someplace around the world, it needs to be like 9 o'clock somewhere. And I found out that, 6 o'clock in the morning, there are 53 countries in Europe that somewhere between 11 o'clock in the morning to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So I could fax them all day and get a response. So I would fax them, drive my kids to school, come back, and there'll be some responses. Usually when you fax them, they would actually send you a response. And whenever they say, thank you so much for sending me this, whatever, the Heritage London person said that. Thank you so much. The Brits are so like proper. They would always
Yeah.
do this thing. And I was like, she said, thank you so much for sending this, but it's not for us, blah, blah, blah. And, and they say it in such an eloquent way. And the minute I get a no from them, I'd get on the phone, call them, and say, you know what? That was the most eloquent rejection letter I ever got in my life. Thank you so much for sending me this rejection letter or faxing me the rejection letter because the fact is 90% of the people don't even bother sending me the rejection letter. They just like ignore you. So I said, since you took the time to look at my things, just let me know why it isn't for you. Like if it, I mean, is it too, garish or, like just give me any tips that you might have so that next time I approach you, I would actually try to have a dialogue with you because I really like you as a person. I mean, you're amazing. And it's amazing. They feel so bad and feel guilty because half the time they haven't actually looked at it. Or sometimes they're embarrassed to tell you like why,
Yeah.
but you start a dialogue. And when I do get them to talk to me about what they want, I usually close a sale. So, you know, starting small. And I did end up opening Harrods and Gallagher's Lafayette. And then once I was there and I was in their catalogs all the time, I actually it was very easy for me to open Neiman Marcus, Saks Fifth Avenue, everybody else. Once I was there, I got a call from HSN asking me if I could be on their TV station. I was like, I don't really know. I always say no first. Um, so anyway, that's what happened.
That is epic. That is such an epic story. And I just, I love the entrepreneurial spirit that was in that story. The real,
Yeah.
you scaled contextual, personalized messages in like a
Right.
bootstrapped way. And I just think that's such a beautiful thing.
No money. No, it doesn't require a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love it. It's just the effort, the intention, and the care went far, and you see it in the results that you've gotten in business. So I
Yeah.
love it. Well, awesome. Victoria, now we're going to jump into your dreams and goals. So I know you've already accomplished a lot in your life, but what is your vision for your life and your business going forward?
So I wrote uh I wrote two books actually. I always wanted to write a fiction because I living in South Korea and we didn't live in Seoul. I lived in a like a very small seaside beach town that didn't even get like a TV connection at all. Like we had a TV, but it was mostly snow. The only TV I ever saw was Muhammad Ali had a fight or something, and I remember like the whole town they were like packed in my living room. It was the only one that actually came like the connection actually came to our house. But all kidding aside, I saw my world through books. I was always a curious person, and I always wondered we would have this beach. Like I would always go to the beach and watch the sunset. And when you watch the sunset, like right when the horizon's there and the sun just like literally just drops right in there, and I used to think on the other side of that line, like there has to be other kids like me somewhere, right? Like, how do they live? And so I saw the world through books mostly. And I still today read about, let's say, 50 books a year. I read about a book, a week, sometimes two a week, and sometimes I'll skip a week or so. So what happened was I always wanted to write a book, a fiction, and I didn't care if anybody read it or not. I wanted to get it out of my system, so I wrote the book. And then in marketing that book, um, some of the people that I contacted, like the publishers of like HarperCollins, Random House, all these places, I went to some sort of a publishing trade show. And they were all like, you know what, Victoria, you sold over 10 million pieces of jewelry. Because some of them were actually my fans. They actually asked me, like, why are you writing a fiction when you should be writing a how to book? And I was like, you know what? What worked for me back in 1989? You know, I could say that I was maybe lucky, maybe it worked because of the time at that time. Or I don't know what, but I can't guarantee anybody that if I wrote what I did, that it would work for somebody else today. And I don't want to take their money unless I could help them, right? So anyway, then COVID hit, so I wrote the second book. But here's my thing. I don't have any dreams of becoming bigger or making more money or anything like that. I My husband and I told ourselves that if we hit a certain number, we're just going to gracefully exit the business so that we could enjoy life because both of our dads died pretty early. And but my father and my grandmother, my whole like that whole side of the family, they would always say that you don't succeed alone. Even if you feel like you've done everything, there were forces behind you and ahead of you that helped shape who you are. So you are not actually really successful until you help other people be successful.
Mm,
So that's my mission now is I want to create many, many millionaires because what I did isn't extraordinary. Like I'm not a very smart person. I mean, I'm a probably I'd say average to above average intelligence, but I had that grit and perseverance and that can do spirit that never left me, no matter what happened to me. And I would say that when things got really rough, like I went to school in an area where kids actually came to school with switchblades. I mean, there were always like gunfights, and it was pretty rough because we didn't have any money, so we rented a place in a horrible place. And when you don't speak English, you really don't have friends either. So I'd come home, and I used to cry a lot because there was just like I had four younger siblings I had to take care of. My parents weren't around. Life was pretty tough. But I would always say to myself, like, God did not put me on earth so I could just suffer like this and just die. And as long as there has to be a purpose in my life. And as long as I'm breathing and I'm able to think on my own, I need to find out what the purpose is. And I need to figure out what am I supposed to do right now? And that is like, I'm the one thing I really believe in is Instead of having these dreams of, I'm going to be a millionaire, a billionaire, I'm going to, spend all this time with my family, I'm going to lose all this weight, all these grandeur, thing. Forget about all that. Think about what you can do right now, today, that can impact you tomorrow. So, like, if you want to, let's say you want to lose, 30 pounds. You say to yourself, you know what? I'm just going to lose weight. I'm just going to be really serious about it. I'm going to be very intentional about it. I'm going to really get with it. Okay, this is your plan. It's not going to work. But if you said to yourself, you know what? I'm going to lose 10 pounds in the next 10 weeks. So if you say I have to lose 1 pound a week, and then you say to yourself, what do I have to do to lose 1 pound a week? Depending on what you weigh, you might need to cut down 200 calories a day or something. That's like a piece of toast or a glass of wine or something you have to cut out. And even if you couldn't cut it out every day, you cut it out every other day. Or maybe you don't cut it out in the days you don't cut out, you walk around the block 2 times. You may not lose 10 pounds, but you might lose 7 pounds. But
Yep.
if you do that 3 times, you're still going to be better off. So success is almost addicting because the next time go around, you realize, oh my God, I cheated, I didn't do it all that well, and I still lost 7 pounds, right? So you do it right the next time, and you might lose 15. Who knows?
Yeah.
But the point is, you got to start somewhere, and you have to think about the one thing that you can do that can impact, that has the most impact in your life right now. So if you have time to bitch about your life, what's not working, you have time to do something right. You have time to do one thing right, and that's what you have to focus on, right?
Mm.
So my dream is to see every American who dares to dream, help them, achieve that dream.
I love that. I love specifically how you talked about breaking down your big colossal dreams into
Yeah,
small daily action steps, because that was I was getting stuck there for a while of like, I don't know if you know who Grant Cardone is, but he's like 10x, 10x, 10x. And so I was always
yeah,
going 10x with my
yeah,
mindset,
yeah.
and then I was trying to do 10x with my action, but I couldn't do it consistently. And so it's just
Right.
like, start where you are and be consistent, and it will grow. And then your days and your actions will compound, and then you'll see results. And so that shift really helped me a lot. So
Well, the other thing I would say is, in fact, I had a call this morning from a young lady that I gave her like a free call. And by the way, your people can book a free call, and this woman had booked a free call. It'll say 15 minutes, but I actually booked a 30-minute call. And she was telling me, like, she had done radio, she was in corporate, she was a fitness instructor, and now she teaches intentional um, intuition and whatever coaching. She went through all these things. And I said to her, okay, so number one, at the end of, if everything you dream about, happened the right way, what is the, how do you see your life at the end? Like, what do you aspire to do? And she had like really trouble like figuring out. And I said to her, if you cut out in your like multi family business. My husband actually used to be in that, and then he retired. But usually, if you have several properties, there's a few of them that'll actually account for 80% of your total revenue.
mhm.
It's an 80-20 rule. So you're going to end up with 20% of your people that contribute 80% of your total revenue. Same thing with your products. Okay, so what you got to really figure out, you know, what efforts do I give to, what is it that I do? What activities, what talents do I have that actually generates the most amount of impact at the end, either qualitatively or quantitatively. So like when I'm on TV, I have a monthly show every month. When I'm on TV, we have what we call planned failures, because if you go to a store, and let's say you go to a store and you're looking for a black shirt. You're going to some event where it's like a black party or something, you want a black shirt. You're not going to go to a store that has all black all the time because you can't tell what's what. You'll go to a store where there's like a biggest selection of, shoes or whatever. And so, but with the intention that you're going to walk out with a black shoe. The same, it's like most of the people who are buying, like buyers of department stores who buy men's sportswear, for example, they know that 80% of their sales come from white cotton shirts basically every year. So, but then some white shirts sell better than others, right?
Yeah.
It could be the cut, it could be the fit, it could be the button down, it could be slight prints, it could be the color of white, who knows what. But but if you're playing in the white space, understanding that 80% of your business in the summer months is going to be white shirts. If you're playing, but if you're in the lavender space, you're like, oh my God, like I can sell white shirts all day long, but I'm going to get some lavender, the eggshell, the pink, and I want some, purple, all this other stuff. And you're spending all this time on things that's going to maybe amount to 10% of your total business. You're completely wasting your time. Right. So what I'm saying is like, once you realize what your end goal is, it's like if you want to be a great writer, it's better for you, and you know that for a fact. You want to be a writer, you want to write a fiction, you want to write films or whatever. This is what you want to be in your life. You have no business becoming a waitress because that doesn't support. You're better off working at a new, you might get better tips, but you're better off going to like a blogging operation, or even if you're delivering coffee, because you're still making connections in the right places, at a newspaper company, right?
Yeah.
So once you understand what your goal is, you got to figure out how to keep on going forward. It could be a little step backwards or forwards, but you want to be a writer, but you're taking singing lessons with the money you don't have. You got a problem. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
not helping you. I know it sounds really common sense, but a lot of people don't seem to realize that.
No, it's so
That
true. You got to get focused, you got to get clear, and then you got to take intentional action
right.
towards that focused clarity. Now, I know, Victoria, that you're going to have to go here pretty soon because we're on a time crunch and we're about at your time. So, yeah, I just wanted to thank you for coming on the show. And if there are any last words that you had for the guests, you could say them now.
Well, I would say this is America. I know times are tough right now, and I know times are uncertain. But I like to say the greatest fortunes in America actually were made during these tough times.
Yeah.
Warren Buffett has I don't know, you've heard this, you might have heard this. Warren Buffett has a really interesting saying. He says, you don't know who's swimming naked until the tide goes out. So,
Yeah.
right? So when times are good, everybody seems to be doing great. But let me just tell you something. During the Great Depression, in the worst of times, some of the biggest companies that we know, Procter and Gamble, Burger King, I mean, you go down the list of all these names that, Trader Joe's. I mean, these companies started in a financial depression. Microsoft, Apple, they both started, basically in 1989, same thing. So I would say that times are tough, it's uncertain, but these are the times when you can actually regroup and figure out you don't have money to do 20 things. You really have to figure out what your God-given gift is. And it could be that you're a great listener. It could be that you're a great organizer. It could be that you're, whatever your gift is, because those skill sets are, innate in you. Use it and believe in yourself, because we're all equal. We all came to this world with exactly the same. We're all equal. And if you don't believe in yourself, no one is going to believe you. Right. So
Absolutely.
you have to believe in yourself. And I would also say one really important thing is embrace failure, because without failure, there is no success. And I will say that I screwed up on a lot of things. And when people say, "Oh my God, Victoria, you did it," and I say, "No, no, no. I actually made more mistakes than most people have, but I just had the perseverance to get up." I think entrepreneurs, especially, and I know if you're doing this podcast, you probably hear people do this. It's really hard for people to leave corporate world, especially if they're making good money, corporate world, to start their own business, because it's like an uncertain, unknown territory. And then they finally start their business because they feel like, okay, you know what, I'm just working too many hours for all the wrong people, and I hate my boss or whatever. Or maybe they get fired and they start their business. And they've heard, how hard it is to become an entrepreneur, how hard it is to, be successful. And they're working 20 hours a day. Something goes wrong and they're like, oh my God, I should listen to everybody. I'm going to go look for a job. They didn't really give themselves a chance, right? Because you're supposed to fail the first time. It's like,
Yeah.
I have a granddaughter now. When she's walking, she falls back. Sometimes she falls forwards a few times, but she gets up. Because if she never gets up, she'll be, you know what I mean? You're supposed to figure out. So then if you're lucky enough to have somebody like your mom or your wife or your significant other or your brother or sister says, you know what, Timmy, you did all those things right. Yeah, this thing you launched, it was disappointing. Nobody showed up, but look what happened. You have an amazing business. Maybe it was a marketing message. Maybe it was this. Maybe it was that. Try another different day. If you finally get somebody who does that for you and you get the gumption to try it again and it fails again, then you're like, okay, that's it. I give up. But don't do that. I'm here to tell you if you stick to it, you will find the right path at some point. And when you do, you're going to be so much richer in terms of what value you add to your customers, um, and and your community around you, and to yourself. You just learn a lot more. I mean, there's no learning when you don't ever fail.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, look at Michael Jordan, not a basketball player. Okay, well, uh, if you, I think I read somewhere that they had given him like a Hail Mary shot. I'm sure if you're Michael Jordan, you get a lot of the Hail Mary shots at the end of the like time period,
Yeah.
like you win or lose the game. And he only made like 30% of those Hail Mary shots.
Yep.
And he was Michael Jordan, the greatest of all time. You look at Babe Ruth, I don't know if he's shooting like 450. I don't know what his number is, but let's say be generous, 450. That means more than half the time he didn't, he struck out,
Yeah.
right? So think about that. And these were the best of the best of the best. So if you don't dare to be the best and you are like, okay, you know what? I'm going to be happy if I hit 300. That means two-thirds of the time you're going to fail. And you
Yep.
have to embrace that
Yeah.
because by missing two-thirds of the time, you'll realize which balls you're going to hit, which balls you're not going to hit, which balls are worth taking a chance, right? So the idea that you're an entrepreneur and you put all your money and you do this stuff and then it's not like going like gangbusters. Well, hello, you know, it's supposed to not work the first time. I'm not kidding you.
Yeah.
So
I love that. Well, awesome. If you guys are listening to this and you loved what Victoria had to say, make sure to check out her podcast and buy both her books. Those will be down in the show notes below. I believe one of them isn't out yet. So,
yeah, they're both not out. VictoriaWick.com. You can come to VictoriaWieck.com and it's got all the stuff that I do. And if any of you, I don't sell any courses or anything like that. I don't have time to teach courses now. But if any of you want like a 30-minute free consultation of whatever you're doing, scaling your business, I'm going to tell you right now, my expertise in that is people trying to go from 7 figures to 8 figures. So, there's a lot of people that teach people how to do whatever, trying to really struggle through the first 6 figures. When you get to 7 figures, the stakes are much higher. Like it's much higher. You can go bankrupt if you don't handle, the certain way. Same thing with the stress level. So that's my expertise, but that doesn't mean that I couldn't help you if you were trying to get to the 7 figures. So anytime, victoriawick.com, you can check out my books. You can check out I do occasionally free webinars, complete, no strings attached at all. And I'll do, if there's a lot of demand for something, I'll do it, but I don't do it like very often, about once every 2 months or so.
there we
And
go.
yeah, and it's limited to like 50 people. So if there are like 1,000 signed up, the first 50 get in.
Love it. Love it. Well, on that note, guys, shoot this podcast over to 1 to 3 people you know need to hear this message. Go ahead and give us a 5-star review on iTunes if you liked the show. And we'll have to bring Victoria back on because we didn't get through all of our questions. But yeah, we'll have to do it another time. And on that note, we're out.